I stood outside the kitchen, gripping my walking cane so tight my knuckles turned white. The words hit me like a second stroke. "I didn't sign up to be a nurse, Kyle," my daughter Rachel said to her husband. "He's just a burden now. I can't keep doing this." Her voice was sharp, frustrated, like she was talking about an old appliance that needed replacing. I had given up my retirement, sold my home, and moved in with them because she insisted. "Dad, we want to take care of you," she had said with tears in her eyes just 3 months ago. Now I knew the truth. I wasn't wanted. I was tolerated. The man who raised her, who worked 2 jobs to pay for her college, who walked her down the aisle, was now just dead weight in her perfect suburban life. I quietly turned around and walked back to my room, each step heavier than the last. That night, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when I had become invisible. When had my daughter's heart grown so cold? I didn't know it then, but everything was about to change. I didn't know it then, but everything was about to change. 3 months earlier, everything had been different. The stroke hit me like lightning on a Tuesday morning while I was reading the newspaper. When I woke up in the hospital, Rachel was there crying, holding my hand. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have visited more. I should have called. The doctors said I'd need months of recovery and couldn't live alone anymore." Without hesitation, Rachel insisted I move in with them. "We have that extra room upstairs, Dad. It's perfect for you." I was hesitant at first. I loved my little house, my independence, my quiet mornings on the porch, but seeing her genuine concern melted my heart. So I sold everything, my house, most of my furniture, everything that made me feel like myself. The retirement money from the sale would help with medical bills, I thought. Rachel helped me pack, and Kyle even hired movers. "We're family," she said, hugging me tight. "We take care of each other." For the first time since my wife died 5 years ago, I felt hopeful. I thought I was coming home. I thought this was love. I was so wrong. The first sign should have been the cold meals. In my own house, I used to cook warm breakfast every morning. Here, Rachel would leave me cereal and milk. Sometimes not even fresh milk. "I have to get the kids ready for school, Dad," she'd say when I asked about hot food. Then there were the medication reminders that never came. I had to set my own alarms because she'd forget. The worst part was when guests visited. "Dad, maybe you should rest upstairs while my book club is here," she'd suggest. "Or Kyle's colleagues are coming over. You know how loud they get." I started to feel like a pet that embarrassed them. The grandfather, who used to be the center of family gatherings, was now asked to hide in his room. I began eating dinner alone while they ate together downstairs. "We eat so late, Dad. You need your rest," Rachel explained. But I could hear them laughing, talking, living their lives without me. I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was just an old man taking up space in their perfect home. Some nights, I'd whisper to myself, "I'm not a pet. I'm still a person." The discovery came by accident. I was walking to the kitchen for water when I saw papers scattered on the counter. Medical bills, bank statements, documents with my name on them. My heart stopped when I saw the numbers. Rachel had used my retirement money, $85,000 from selling my house, to fund Kyle's new restaurant business. There was a business loan application with my signature, but I had never signed anything. My signature had been forged. The money I thought was safely sitting in my account for medical emergencies was gone, invested in Kyle's dream without my knowledge or permission. I stood there shaking, realizing my daughter had essentially stolen my life savings, the money meant for my medications, my physical therapy, my dignity in old age. All gone to fund their ambitions. I carefully took photos with my phone, my hands trembling. I had trusted her completely. I'd signed the power of attorney papers thinking she'd protect me. Instead, she had robbed me blind that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the beautiful lies she'd told me about wanting to care for me. It was all about the money. I was just a wallet with legs. When I finally confronted Rachel about the money, her reaction confirmed my worst fears. "Dad, you didn't need it anyway," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "I mean, what were you going to do with it? You live here now. We take care of everything." Her casual dismissal of my life savings was like a slap in the face. "That money was for my medical care, Rachel. It was my security." She sighed dramatically. "You're not dying, Dad. Stop being so dramatic. Kyle's restaurant is going to pay off big time. We'll pay you back eventually." The way she said eventually made it clear she had no intention of returning my money. She had spent my retirement fund like it was her inheritance, except I was still alive to see it happen. I trusted you, I whispered. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were cold, distant. Trust me now. This is better for everyone. That's when I realized the horrible truth. She didn't see me as her father anymore. I wasn't a human being with rights and dignity. I was just an inconvenience, a burden, a problem to be managed. The daughter I had raised with love and sacrifice had disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could steal from her own father and sleep peacefully at night. The public humiliation happened at my grandson's birthday party. All the relatives were there, people I'd known for decades. Kyle, feeling generous with my stolen money, made a toast. Here's to Grandpa Joe, still kicking around despite everything. Must be all those prayers working, right? Everyone laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Still kicking around. Like I was a dying dog that refused to go quietly. I sat there with my cake, watching people who used to respect me now treating me like a punchline. Rachel laughed the loudest, as if my survival was some kind of joke. Later I heard whispers. He's really slowed down. Poor Rachel, having to deal with all that. At least he's not too much trouble. They were talking about me like I wasn't there, like I couldn't hear them. The man who used to fix their cars, lend them money, give advice about their marriages was now just poor Rachel's burden. I excused myself early and went to my room. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Kyle say, "He's getting more fragile every day." And Rachel replied, "I know. It's exhausting." That night, I cried for the first time since my wife's funeral, not from physical pain, but from the soul-crushing realization that I had become invisible in my own family. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat on my bed and recorded a voice note on my phone. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Rachel, you once used to run to me when you fell down and scraped your knee. You'd cry, and I'd hold you until the tears stopped. Now I'm the fall you want to run from. I see how you look at me, like I'm a problem you can't solve. I hear how you talk about me when you think I can't hear." I paused, looking around the room that never felt like home. "I'm moving out tomorrow before you wake up. I won't be your burden anymore. Maybe without me here, you can remember who you used to be before you became someone who steals from her own father." I saved the recording and set it to send at 6 in the morning. Then I quietly packed my few belongings. I called a taxi for 5 a.m. and arranged for an assisted living facility across town. I had done my research weeks ago, just in case. May Allah soften your heart someday, Rachel. You're going to need that softness when you're old and your children are deciding what to do with you. I left the voice note on her nightstand and disappeared before dawn, just like I used to when I worked early shifts to pay for her dance lessons. The assisted living apartment was small, but it was mine. I paid for 6 months up front with what little savings Rachel hadn't found. The silence was different here, peaceful instead of hostile. No one looked at me like I was in the way. The staff was kind, professional. They brought me hot meals and reminded me about medications without making me feel like a burden. I started physical therapy again, this time with motivation I hadn't felt in months. In my old room at Rachel's house, I had given up trying to get better. What was the point? Here, every small improvement felt like victory. I began a handwritten journal that I titled "What They Didn't See." I wrote about the nights I lay awake, listening to them plan their future with my money. I wrote about the grandson who stopped hugging me because he sensed I wasn't welcome anymore. I wrote about the daughter who used to call me her hero, and now saw me as her burden. Writing helped me process the betrayal, the theft, the casual cruelty of being dismissed by your own child. Some days I was angry. Other days I was just sad, but every day I grew a little stronger. The walls here didn't whisper about my failures. They just held space for an old man to heal. 2 weeks after I left, Rachel's perfect world started cracking. Kyle's restaurant was hemorrhaging money faster than they could pour it in. The fancy equipment bought with my retirement fund was repossessed. The loans were being called in. She went to check my old bank account, probably planning to take more money for their emergency. That's when she discovered I had closed everything before leaving. Every account, every investment, everything was gone. The note I left with the bank was simple: "Don't count a man out just because he's slow to walk." She called me for the first time in weeks, panic in her voice. "Dad, where's all the money? The accounts are empty." I let her voicemail fill up without responding. They had made their choices with my money. Now they could live with the consequences. Through mutual friends, I heard about their fights, their stress, their sudden realization that they had built their dreams on stolen foundations. Kyle blamed Rachel for not getting more money from me before I left. Rachel blamed Kyle for the failed business. Neither of them blamed themselves for treating an old man like a piggy bank. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, just a quiet sense of justice. They were learning what it felt like to be powerless, just like they had made me feel. The real shock came when Rachel discovered something she had completely forgotten. In all her eagerness to access my money, she had never bothered to properly transfer ownership of the house I had been living in. According to the legal documents, I was still the co-owner. She had my money, but I still had legal claim to the house I had essentially paid for with my retirement fund. My lawyer, a kind man named Marcus from the mosque I had started attending, explained it to me. Joseph, when you moved in and they used your money for renovations and the business, you became a legal co-owner. She never filed the proper papers to release your claim. I stared at the documents in disbelief. Rachel had been so confident, so dismissive of my rights, that she had forgotten basic legal procedures. What does this mean? I asked Marcus. It means she can't sell the house, refinance it, or make major financial decisions without your approval. And since they used your money without proper legal authorization, you have grounds to reclaim your investment. For the first time in months, I smiled, not from revenge, but from the realization that I wasn't as powerless as they had made me feel. The law still protected old men from being robbed by their own children. The certified letter arrived at Rachel's house on a Tuesday morning. You have 30 days to vacate the premises or arrange immediate financial compensation for unauthorized use of co-owner funds. Rachel called me immediately, her voice shaking. Dad, what is this? You can't kick us out of our own house. I could hear Kyle yelling in the background. It's not entirely your house, Rachel, I said calmly. You used my money to pay the mortgage, renovate the kitchen, and start the business. Legally, that makes me a co-owner. I never agreed to any of this. The silence on the other end was deafening. But Dad, we're your family. You can't do this to us. The irony was stunning. Now I was family again, now that they needed something from me. I offered to be family when I moved in, I replied. You chose to make me a burden instead. You stole my money and threw away my dignity. Now you want family loyalty? I could hear her crying, but my heart didn't soften like it used to. 30 days, Rachel. That's what the law requires. Use the time wisely. I hung up and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Not over them, but over my own life. I wasn't their victim anymore. The certified letter arrived at Rachel's house on a Tuesday morning. You have 30 days to vacate the premises or arrange immediate financial compensation for unauthorized use of co-owner funds. Rachel called me immediately, her voice shaking. Dad, what is this? You can't kick us out of our own house. I could hear Kyle yelling in the background. It's not entirely your house, Rachel, I said calmly. You used my money to pay the mortgage, renovate the kitchen, and start the business. Legally, that makes me a co-owner. I never agreed to any of this. The silence on the other end was deafening. But Dad, we're your family. You can't do this to us. The irony was stunning. Now I was family again, now that they needed something from me. I offered to be family when I moved in, I replied. You chose to make me a burden instead. You stole my money and threw away my dignity. Now you want family loyalty? I could hear her crying, but my heart didn't soften like it used to. 30 days, Rachel. That's what the law requires. Use the time wisely. I hung up and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power, not over them, but over my own life. I wasn't their victim anymore. The local mosque became my sanctuary. Brother Marcus, the attorney who was helping me, introduced me to a community I never knew existed. Men and women who understood the value of respecting elders, who saw wisdom instead of burden in gray hair. I started attending Friday prayers, then daily prayers. The imam, a gentle man named Hassan, would often ask about my health, my needs, my thoughts on various matters. For the first time in months, I felt heard. Brother Joseph, he said one day, you carry yourself with dignity despite your trials. This is the mark of a man who knows his worth comes from Allah, not from how others treat him. I began volunteering at the mosque's community outreach program, helping other elderly Muslims who had been abandoned by their families. There was Sister Fatima, whose son moved her to a nursing home and never visited. Brother Ahmed, whose daughter stole his social security checks. We were a small club of forgotten parents, but we found strength in each other. Marcus started attending our weekly gatherings, offering free legal advice to elderly community members. Word spread that there was a place where old people's voices mattered, where their rights were protected. While going through my old papers, I found the original contract Rachel had me sign when I moved in. Reading it carefully for the first time, I discovered something crucial. The document clearly stated that my financial contribution was for medical recovery purposes only, and that any funds used for other purposes required written consent from both parties. Rachel had violated the contract by using my money for Kyle's business. I had legal grounds not just for co-ownership, but for outright fraud charges. Marcus reviewed the documents with growing excitement. "Joseph, this is ironclad. She not only stole from you, she violated a legal contract. You could press criminal charges if you wanted." I sat quietly, processing this information. I could destroy my daughter's life with these papers. I could send her to jail, ruin her credit, take away her children's stability. But looking at Marcus, I said something that surprised even me. I want justice, not destruction. I want her to learn, not suffer. Marcus nodded with respect. "That's the difference between wisdom and revenge, Brother Joseph. Let's see how far wisdom can reach." We prepared the legal action, but I insisted on giving Rachel a chance to make things right before involving criminal courts. Sometimes the threat of consequences teaches more than the consequences themselves. Financial desperation drives people to desperate measures. Rachel and Kyle started having a garage sale, selling furniture, electronics, anything that could bring in quick cash. I heard about it from neighbors who attended my mosque and recognized me from old family photos. "They're selling everything, Brother Joseph, even some things that looked like family heirlooms." I drove by one Saturday morning and saw Kyle arguing with a customer over the price of my wife's antique dining set, the one Rachel had insisted on keeping when we sold my house. She was selling my memories to pay their debts. Neighbors whispered as they browsed through the remnants of their life. "Didn't they just buy that expensive SUV? I thought his restaurant was doing well." The humiliation was public now, spreading through their social circle like wildfire, but I felt no satisfaction watching their downfall. If anything, I felt sad for my grandchildren, who would grow up learning that when times get tough, you sell everything rather than live honestly. I didn't approach them or try to buy back my wife's furniture. Some things, once lost to greed, are better left gone. The people who bought those pieces would probably treasure them more than my daughter ever did. Physical therapy became my form of meditation. Every step without the cane was a victory. Every improvement a declaration that I wasn't finished yet. My therapist, a young woman named Amanda, celebrated each milestone with genuine enthusiasm. "Mr. Joseph, you're the most motivated patient I've ever worked with. What changed?" I thought about her questions seriously. I realized I was walking away from something that almost broke me, not towards something that would fix me. The motivation is different. The day I completed a full walking session without any assistance, Amanda actually clapped. The other patients in the therapy room joined in. I stood there, sweating but proud, and said something that surprised everyone. "I'm not just walking again. I'm walking away from people who convinced me I was broken." That afternoon, I called Marcus with news that even surprised me. "I want to start speaking to other elderly people about their rights. There are too many of us being mistreated by our own families." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Brother Joseph, I think you've found your purpose in this trial. Recovery wasn't just about my physical strength anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice." Her name was Miriam, and she worked the evening shift at my assisted living facility. She was young, maybe Rachel's age, but she treated me with a respect my own daughter had forgotten. "Good evening, Uncle Joseph," she'd say, using the respectful Arabic term for elder. "How are you feeling today?" She'd actually wait for an answer, listen to my concerns, remember details about my day. When I mentioned missing my wife's cooking, she brought me homemade soup. When I struggled with loneliness, she'd sit and talk about her family, her dreams, her faith. "Uncle, you remind me of my grandfather back home," she told me one evening. "He used to say that age is just a young soul in an experienced body. Miriam never pitied me or treated me like a patient. She treated me like a person worth knowing. Through her, I started to heal from the damage Rachel had done to my self-worth. "You know, Uncle," Miriam said one day, "your daughter doesn't understand what she lost when she pushed you away. But that's her loss, not yours." For the first time in months, I felt seen again. Really seen. Not as a burden or a problem, but as a human being worthy of kindness and respect. Writing became my weapon against forgetting. I started transforming my journal entries into a proper memoir, chapter by chapter. The first chapter was titled, "When Kindness Became a Crime," and it detailed the night Rachel called me a burden. I wrote about the stolen money, the forged signatures, the casual cruelty of being erased from family gatherings. But I also wrote about resilience, about community, about finding dignity after betrayal. Marcus helped me type the handwritten pages, and together we created a simple booklet. I mailed the first copy to Rachel with a note, "This is what you didn't see." The rest of the copies I shared at the mosque, with other elderly community members, with anyone who needed to understand that being old doesn't mean being powerless. The response was overwhelming. People shared similar stories, offered support, asked for advice. Brother Hassan approached me after Friday prayers with tears in his eyes. "Brother Joseph, your story is giving voice to many who thought they had no voice. This is powerful dawah." I had accidentally become an advocate, a voice for forgotten parents everywhere. Writing had transformed my pain into purpose, my suffering into service. The confrontation happened in the mosque parking lot after Friday prayers. Rachel had been waiting by my car, her face streaked with tears and anger. "Why are you doing this to me, Dad?" she screamed, drawing attention from other worshippers. "You're destroying my family. My children don't understand why Grandpa is being so mean to us." I looked at her calmly, feeling a peace I hadn't expected. "I'm not doing anything to you, Rachel. You did it to yourself. I'm just not carrying it anymore." She was hysterical now, sobbing about losing the house, about Kyle blaming her, about their financial ruin. "But I'm your daughter. You're supposed to forgive, family." The irony was breathtaking. When she needed forgiveness, I was family. When she was stealing my money, I was a burden. "I have forgiven you," I said quietly. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending crimes didn't happen or enabling bad behavior to continue. It means I don't hate you for what you did, but I also won't help you do it again. Several mosque members had gathered, concerned about the scene. Marcus approached and gently suggested Rachel might want to continue this conversation privately. She pointed at me with rage. "He's not the victim here. I am. I'm the one losing everything." As I drove away, I realized she still didn't understand. She couldn't see past her own problems to recognize the pain she had caused. Some people have to lose everything before they can find their humanity. The community response to my booklet exceeded every expectation. Islamic centers across the city started requesting copies. Elderly Muslims began reaching out, sharing their own stories of neglect and financial abuse by their children. I was invited to speak at Friday sermons, community events, and family counseling sessions. Brother Joseph's story reminds us that respecting our elders is not optional in Islam, Imam Hassan announced during one Friday prayer. It is a commandment from Allah, and the consequences of violating it are severe both in this life and the next. My simple booklet had become a movement. Social workers started referring families to our mosque's elder advocacy program. Lawyers like Marcus began offering pro bono services to elderly Muslims facing similar abuse. Most importantly, adult children started attending our sessions, genuinely wanting to learn how to better care for their aging parents. "I never realized how my father felt when I moved him to assisted living," one woman confessed. "Your story opened my eyes. I wasn't just sharing my pain anymore. I was helping prevent others from experiencing it." The old man who had been dismissed as a burden was now teaching respect for the elderly across the community. The tax audit came like a thunderbolt. Apparently, Kyle had been using my name and social security number on multiple business documents without my knowledge. The IRS discovered discrepancies and launched a full investigation. Rachel faced potential penalties of tens of thousands of dollars for fraud she didn't even know her husband had committed. She tried calling me, but I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages grew increasingly desperate. "Dad, please. I didn't know Kyle was using your information. I need help understanding these tax forms. They're saying I owe money I don't have." The irony was perfect. The same government agencies she had ignored when stealing my money were now demanding accountability for their fraudulent activities. Marcus explained the situation to me, with barely concealed satisfaction. Joseph, Kyle used your identity for business licenses, tax forms, even loan applications. The penalties could bankrupt them. I listened quietly, feeling no joy in their crisis. What happens if they can't pay? They could lose everything. The house, their credit, possibly face criminal charges. As much as they had hurt me, I didn't want my grandchildren to suffer. But I also wouldn't rescue adults who had chosen to build their lives on lies and theft. The legal offer came through Marcus, carefully worded and absolutely final. I would drop all pursuit of stolen money. I would not press criminal charges for fraud or identity theft. I would release them from the tax penalties I could help them fight. In exchange, Rachel would sign over complete ownership of everything. The house, the business assets, even the SUV bought with my money. It was generous, considering I could have sent them both to prison. Marcus delivered the offer personally, and Rachel's response was immediate panic. But where will we live? What about the children's school? This is our whole life. Kyle, predictably, blamed Rachel for trusting me in the first place. I told you we should have put him in a nursing home and kept control of his money, he said. Not knowing Marcus was recording the conversation for legal purposes, the offer had a 7-day deadline. After that, I would proceed with criminal charges and let the courts decide their fate. Why is he being so cruel? Rachel asked Marcus. He replied simply, he's not being cruel. He's being just. There's a difference your family never learned. They had 1 week to decide if they preferred mercy or justice. I already knew which one they deserved. She came to see me at the assisted living facility, her face puffy from crying, her pride finally broken. Why are you doing this, Dad? Rachel asked, sitting across from me in the small visiting area. For the first time in months, her voice was soft, not demanding. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw glimpses of the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she was scared. Because maybe one day, you'll do better for your own children, I said gently. I'm trying to teach you something before it's too late. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. I didn't mean for things to get this bad. Kyle said it would all work out, that we'd pay you back. I nodded, understanding finally that she had been manipulated too, though that didn't excuse her choices. Rachel, you called me a burden. You stole my money. You hid me from your friends like I was something shameful. Do you understand how that felt? She started crying again, but these tears seemed different. Less anger, more recognition. I was scared, Dad. Scared of being poor, scared of Kyle leaving, scared of not being perfect. I made terrible choices. It was the first time she had taken responsibility without blaming someone else. Progress, but not enough to undo the damage. At Fajr prayer, in the quiet darkness before dawn, I made a dua that surprised even me. Ya Allah, return her heart to the light. Forgive her for what she did to me, and forgive me for raising her with so much softness that I never taught her the strength she needed. The Imam had spoken about forgiveness in his last sermon, explaining that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or enabling, but releasing the anger that poisons our own hearts. I realized I had been carrying rage that was hurting me more than it was teaching her. After prayer, I called Marcus with an unexpected request. I want to modify the legal offer. He was concerned I was being manipulated again. Joseph, what are you thinking? I want to give her a path back, but only if she earns it. She can keep the house if she pays me back over 5 years and attends family counseling. But Kyle has to go. He's the poison in this situation. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's very generous, considering what they did to you. I'm not doing it for them, I explained. I'm doing it for my grandchildren. They deserve a mother who learns from her mistakes, not one who's destroyed by them. Some people called it weakness. I called it wisdom. There's a difference between enabling bad behavior and offering a chance at redemption. The invitation came from the mosque's education committee. They wanted me to lead a monthly parenting circle, teaching young fathers and mothers about the Islamic responsibilities toward elderly parents. Brother Joseph, Imam Hassan explained, your story has reached people in ways that sermons alone cannot. Will you help us teach the next generation? The first session was packed young couples, middle-aged children caring for aging parents, even teenagers whose grandparents had shared my booklet. I spoke about the balance between respecting parents and enabling their harmful behavior, about the difference between caring for someone and controlling them. Islam teaches us that paradise lies at the feet of our mothers, I said. But that doesn't mean we become their slaves, or they become our burdens. Respect works both ways. A young woman raised her hand. What if your parent is abusive or harmful? It was a question I couldn't have answered 6 months ago. You still owe them respect and care, but you don't owe them your destruction. Protect yourself first, then find ways to help them that don't enable their harmful behavior. The sessions grew every month. Word spread that there was a place to discuss difficult family situations without judgment, where Islamic principles met practical reality. The final revelation came 6 months later. Rachel signed the modified agreement, entered counseling, and Kyle moved out. She was slowly learning to be a better mother and daughter, though we were still rebuilding trust. Then I discovered something that changed everything. The widowed family at the mosque, Sister Aisha and her 3 children, had been quietly evicted from their apartment. No family, no savings, nowhere to go. Without telling anyone, I transferred ownership of Rachel's house to them. I called Rachel to explain before she found out another way. Dad, what have you done? That was supposed to be my chance to rebuild. Her voice was panicked but not angry like before. I gave them what I couldn't give you, I said calmly. A home without conditions, without debt, without shame. You'll figure out your own path, just like I had to. The house, bought with my retirement money and watered with my tears, became a sanctuary for people who understood its value. I left Rachel one final voice note, played over the quiet evening call to prayer. I left you with nothing material, Rachel, but perhaps that emptiness will finally help you fill your soul. The greatest inheritance I can give you is the knowledge that everything you need is already inside you. I had won something more valuable than money or property. I had won my dignity back, and maybe, just maybe, I had helped my daughter find hers too.